Imagine a world where the buildings were not merely stone but machines. A world where the cathedrals were not places of prayer but power plants. A world where the cities were designed to resonate with the very frequency of the stars. We are told that the 19th century was the age of horse and buggy. We are told that the magnificent star forts, the towering rotundas, and the electromagnetic spires of the old world were built by men with chisels and hammers, men who had barely mastered steam. But the stones themselves tell a different story. Across the vast expanse of Russia, deep into the deserts of the Tarim Basin, and hidden beneath the soil of the Americas, lies the evidence of a civilization that history has actively erased. They were the architects of the world, Lotus. They were the masters of the ether. They were the Proto-Indo-European Tartarians. But where did they come from? And more importantly, where did they get their impossible technology? The answer does not lie in the 19th century. To find the source code of the Tartarian Empire, we must go back further, much further, back to the year 2000 BC, back to the manuscripts of ancient India, back to the ancestors of the Japhetite kings. Welcome to the forbidden history of the human race. Welcome to the era of the solar nucleus. The central premise of this documentary is radical, yet supported by the oldest texts on Earth. We posit that the 18th and 19th century Tartarian Empire, that vast globe-spanning federation known as Grande Tartarie, was not developing new technology. It was reviving old technology. The star forts that dot our planet were not built to deflect cannonballs. They were cymatic resonators, designed to harness atmospheric electricity. But this science was not invented by the architects of the Renaissance. It was inherited. It was the legacy of the ancestral Setam, Aryan Sanskrit civilization. Preserved in the Vedic manuscripts of India, we call this lost civilization the the Proto-Indo-European Tartarians. And to understand them, we must look at the genealogy of the gods themselves. Modern history teaches us that civilization began in Sumer and Egypt. But the genes tell a different story. The genetic markers of the ruling elite of the ancient world, specifically haplogroup Q, trace back to a single family. The family of Japheth. According to the research of Dr. John Pilkey and the Chronicles of Genesis 10, Japheth was not a simple nomad. He was the Iapetus of Greek mythology. He was the Prajapati of the Hindus. He was the progenitor of the red lineage, the high longevity, high technology aristocracy that ruled the post-flood world. This was the solar nucleus, a period of time roughly around 2500 BC, when the human lifespan extended for centuries. Imagine a scientist who lives for 500 years. What could they invent? What could they perfect? This was the golden age of the monos, despots, the single despot system where one family ruled a unified earth. From this red lineage came the builders, the people who carried the secrets of masonry and metallurgy from the Tower of Babel into the steppes of Central Asia. They were the ancestors of the Scythians. They were the ancestors of the Tartars, deep in the mythologies of Central Asia. There is a legend of two brothers, Tartar and Mogol. They were the twin sons of the ancient Tartarian, while Mogol became the father of the Eastern dynasties. The people we now call the Mongols and the Han Chinese Tartar remained the guardian of the north. His domain was Shakadvipa, this land of the Scythians. This was the northern sphere, the land of the blue-eyed, red-haired warriors, described in the Chinese Chronicles as the deep-set eyes people. These were not the primitive barbarians of Hollywood movies. These were the inheritors of the Aryan technology, while the south descended into the chaos of the Iron Dragon warlords. The House of Tartar maintained the ancient law. They preserved the fire technology of the Maga priests. This bifurcation is critical. Tartaria was not China. Tartaria was Cathay, and its roots were Aryan, Scythian, and Japhetite. For decades, the true history of this region has been suppressed. The CIA document from 1957, titled National Cultural Development under Communism, explicitly states that the Soviet authorities ordered the history of Tartaria to be scientifically revised. They were ordered to erase the evidence, but the truth cannot be buried forever. Enter the research of Dr. Alfred H. Marshall through his monumental series, The Chronicles of Grande Tartarie. Dr. Marshall has reconstructed the shattered timeline by synthesizing the isochronic chronology of Dr. John Pilkey with modern genetic data and architectural forensics. Marshall has provided the unified theory that connects the dots. He proves that the mudflood of the 19th century was the final blow in a war that had lasted for 4,000 years, a war to destroy the legacy of the solar nucleus. But how do we prove they had high technology? We don't need to guess. We have the manuals. In his groundbreaking book, IFO Identified Flying ooparts, author Siraz, Marshall does what no academic has dared to do. He treats the ancient Sanskrit texts not as religious poetry, but as technical blueprints. Ooparts stands for out-of-place artifact. Usually, this refers to a physical object, like the Antikythera mechanism, but Sir Marshall argues that the texts themselves are the artifacts. The descriptions of machines in the Mahabharata and the Samarangana Sutradhara are too specific, too technical, to be mere fantasy. This book acts as the bridge. It connects the Vimanas of ancient India to the airships of the 19th century Tartarians. It shows that the magic of the gods was simply the science of the ancestors. To understand the technology, we must understand the timeline. Standard history tells us we evolved from cavemen. The Tartarian model tells us we devolved from gods. The solar nucleus was the period immediately following the Great Flood. The atmosphere was different. The electromagnetic field of the earth was different. The patriarchs Noah, Shem, Japheth possessed mental and physical capabilities far beyond modern man. They established a global grid, the world lotus centered on the Pamir Mountains. But this unity was shattered. The first Kish rebellion and the incident at Babel fragmented the languages and the sciences. The high technology was hidden away by secret brotherhoods, the Maga priests of the north. It would not re-emerge until the Renaissance, under the empire of the Great Cham. How do we verify this? We use the method of euhemerism. This is the ancient Greek practice of interpreting mythology as real history. When the texts speak of Indra throwing a lightning bolt, we do not see a god. We see a king using a directed energy weapon. When the Chinese chronicles speak of the Yellow Emperor descending in a dragon, we do not see a monster. We see a technological vehicle. By stripping away the mythological gloss, the hard machinery of the past is revealed. If you search for Tartaria on YouTube today, you will find thousands of videos. They talk about the mud flood. They talk about the orphan trains. They talk about the world's fairs. And this is all true. But most of these researchers are looking at the effects. They are looking at the ruins. Sir R. Marshall's book, Identified Flying ooparts, looks at the cause. It looks at the Sanskrit source code. While YouTube theorists speculate about free energy fireplaces, the Sanskrit texts give us the diagrams for Mercury vortex engines. While online sleuths wonder about atmospheric electricity, the Vedic hymns describe the specific crystals used to harness it. We are about to go deeper than the internet has ever gone. Let us now examine the evidence. Based on the translations in Identified Flying ooparts, here are the 5 technologies that powered the ancient world, and likely the Tartarian Empire. In the Vishnu Purana, There is a description of a device called the Siamantaka gem. History calls it a jewel. But the text describes its function. It was worn around the neck of the sun god, Surya. But when given to a human king, it produced a massive quantity of gold every single day. Sir Marshall's commentary reveals the truth. This was not a magic stone. It was a compact radiotrophic reactor, a matter converter. It used high-energy radiation to transmute elements at the atomic level. This is the philosopher's stone of alchemy. And it was real technology used to fund the empire of the solar nucleus. We have all heard of the nuclear explosions of the past, the vitrified ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, the melted forts of Scotland. The text of the Mahabharata describes the weapon responsible, the Brahmastra. It is described as a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. An incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 10,000 suns. But look at the after effects described in the text. The hair and nails of the survivors fell out. The pottery broke without cause. The birds turned white. This is radiation poisoning. This is a scalar weapon or a fusion bomb. The iron dragons of the Dark Ages did not fight with swords alone. They fought with the fire of the gods. Perhaps the most famous of all ancient technologies is the Vimana. But in the Samarangana Sutradhara, we find the engine specifications. It speaks of a central pillar of mercury and iron heating apparatus. When mercury is heated and rotated, it creates a plasma vortex. This generates anti-gravity lift. NASA studied this concept in the 1970s. The Tartarians had it 4,000 years ago. This explains the airships seen in the etchings of the 1800s. They were not simple balloons. They were the last of the Mercury fleet. We think of robots as a modern invention. But in the court of the Indian king Bhoja, and in the legends of the Greek Hephaestus, we find the Yantra Purusha, the mechanical men. The texts describe mechanical soldiers placed at the gates of palaces to strike down intruders. They describe automatic fountains and singing birds made of gold and brass. This connects directly to the accounts of Marco Polo in the court of Kublai Khan, the great Cham of Tartaria. He saw mechanical peacocks and floating banquet tables. The robotics of the ancients survived in the palaces of Cathay. Finally, we come to the star forts. The star forts are built in the shape of cymatic frequencies. The pattern sound makes in water or sand. Why? The Shiva Purana speaks of the sonic kavacha, an armor made of sound. By chanting specific mantras or frequencies, the priests could create an impenetrable barrier. The star forts were the industrial version of this. They were massive stone speakers, resonating the water in their moats to create a scalar shield that repelled enemies and harmonized the environment. So what happened? Why do we drive cars that burn dead dinosaurs when our ancestors flew on plasma? The cycle of time is ruthless. The iron dragons of the East and the Roman legions of the West conspired to destroy the solar nucleus. They shattered the world lotus. The technology was driven underground, preserved only by the Maga Brahmins and the Freemasonic guilds who built the Gothic cathedrals. There was a brief moment, a high renaissance, where the Tartarian Empire tried to bring it back. They built the star forts. They lit the cities with atmospheric energy. But the parasitic elite, the Romanovs and the Western bankers, initiated the Great Reset of the 19th century. Flooded the cities with atmospheric. They gathered the orphans. They burned the books, and they rewrote history. But the stones remain. The genes remain. And thanks to the work of scholars like Dr. Pilkey and Sir Marshall, the manuscripts are finally speaking again. The Proto-Indo-European Tartarians are not dead. They are waiting for us to remember. Do you want to see the blueprints for yourself? Do you want to read the forbidden chronology of the Japhethite kings? Do you want to read about the flying Vimana aircraft? The books are available now. The Chronicles of Grande Tartarie and Ifo, Identified Flying Ooparts by Sir Ardis Marshall. These are not just books. They are the keys to the library of Rajasthan. Find the links in the description below. Join the research. Break the conditioning. Don't resist. Open your eyes, ears, and mouth. And remember, history is not what you were told, it is what you discover.